Clara's hands slammed against Harold Morrison's desk. "You're trading me like cattle." The banker's smile never faltered. "Sign the marriage certificate, Miss Whitmore, or lose your teaching position by Monday. Ethan Walker needs a wife to save his ranch. You need respectability to keep your job. It's a business transaction." Across the room, Ethan stood silent, grief-stricken eyes refusing to meet hers. "I won't do this," Clara whispered. Morrison leaned forward. "Then pack your belongings. Spinsters over 28 aren't fit to teach children. The school board agrees." Clara looked at the contract, at Ethan's defeated posture, at her own signature line waiting. Her entire life reduced to one impossible choice: marry a stranger who'd never love her or lose everything she'd fought to build. Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now let's dive into part 1. Clara's hands shook as she walked back to the schoolhouse, Morrison's proposition echoing in her skull. Marriage. To Ethan Walker. A man she'd spoken to exactly 3 times in 4 years, each conversation lasting less than 2 minutes. A widower still mourning his wife. A stranger who would look at her across the breakfast table and see nothing but the town's unwanted spinster. "Miss Whitmore, wait." She spun around. Ethan stood 20 feet behind her, hat in hand, looking like he'd rather face a firing squad. "I need to talk to you." "I heard everything Morrison said. You don't need to explain." "I do." He closed the distance between them. "This isn't... I don't want you thinking I agreed to this." "But you will agree to it." Clara forced herself to meet his gaze. "Because Morrison has you trapped, and I'm the only way out. I have a daughter. Sophie is 7 years old. If I lose the ranch, she loses everything. And I lose my position at the school." Clara's voice came out harder than she intended. "Unmarried women over 25 aren't fit to teach young minds according to the school board. Morrison made sure they know about this generous offer. If I refuse, I'm dismissed for turning down a respectable proposal. If I accept, I keep my salary and position." Ethan's expression shifted. "He backed you into the same corner." "Morrison doesn't leave corners. He builds cages." Clara straightened her spine. "When do you need an answer?" "He gave me until Friday. 3 days." "Then we both have 3 days to decide if survival is worth the price of our dignity." She walked away before he could respond, her mind racing through calculations she'd never imagined making. Marriage to a stranger. Sharing a home with a man who loved a ghost. Becoming stepmother to a child who would see her as the woman who replaced her mother. Every option felt like swallowing broken glass. That evening, Clara sat in her small rented room above the general store, staring at the ledger where she tracked every penny of her salary. $22 a month. 10 went to rent, 4 to food, 3 to supplies for students whose families couldn't afford paper and pencils. The rest disappeared into the cost of simply existing. She had $17 saved. $17 between her and complete destitution if she lost this job. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Clara, it's Margaret's mother. May I come in?" "Mrs. Patterson, Ethan's former mother-in-law." Clara opened the door, confused. The older woman entered without ceremony. "I heard about Morrison's arrangement." News travels fast. In Silver Creek, news travels before it happens. Mrs. Patterson sat down uninvited. "I need to tell you something about my son-in-law." "Mrs. Patterson, I don't think..." "Ethan Walker is a good man trapped in a nightmare. My daughter died 2 years ago, giving birth to their second child. The baby died 3 days later. Ethan hasn't spoken Margaret's name since the funeral. He works himself to exhaustion every day, trying to outrun his grief, and it's destroying him." Clara's throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because if you marry him, you need to understand what you're walking into. He won't love you. He might never love you. But he won't hurt you either. He'll honor the commitment, provide for you, treat you with basic respect. That's more than most women in this town can say about their marriages." That's a ringing endorsement. That's the truth. Mrs. Patterson stood. "My daughter was my world, but she's gone. Sophie is still here and she needs stability. You could give her that. Maybe in the process you'd find something worth having too. After she left, Clara stared at her ledger again. $17. A dead woman's mother recommending her as a suitable replacement. A banker orchestrating marriages like chess moves. A grief-stricken rancher who needed a housekeeper more than a wife. She picked up her pen and wrote a single word across the bottom of the page: survival. Friday arrived faster than Clara wanted. She met Ethan at the courthouse, both of them dressed in their Sunday clothes, both of them looking like they were attending a funeral instead of a wedding. Judge Mitchell performed the ceremony with the enthusiasm of a man reading a grocery list. Do you, Ethan Walker, take Clara Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Clara Whitmore, take Ethan Walker to be your lawfully wedded husband? Clara looked at Ethan's face, blank, resigned, dutiful. She thought about her $17, her rented room, the school board meeting scheduled for Monday where they would decide her fate. I do. By the power vested in me by the state of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. No one kissed. No one smiled. They signed the papers while Morrison watched from the corner, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. The loan extension will be processed Monday morning, Morrison said. Congratulations on your marriage. Ethan's hand clenched around the pen hard enough to crack it. We're done here. He walked out without waiting for Clara. She followed 10 paces behind her new husband, already establishing the distance between them. The ranch house was smaller than Clara expected. 2 bedrooms, a main room with a kitchen area, a porch that needed repairs. Ethan's daughter Sophie stood in the doorway, her dark eyes studying Clara with the intensity of a judge passing sentence. Sophie, this is Clara. She's going to be staying with us now. Is she my new mother? The question hit like a slap. Ethan's face went white. Clara knelt down to Sophie's eye level. No, sweetheart. I'm not your mother. Your mother was a wonderful woman who loved you very much. I'm just Clara. Your father and I got married today, which means I'll be living here and helping out. But I'm not trying to replace anyone. Sophie's expression softened slightly. Papa said we needed help because of the money problems. That's right. Are you going to leave when the money gets better? The question caught Clara off guard. She glanced at Ethan, who looked equally blindsided. That's not... We're married now, Sophie. That means I'm staying. Mama said she was staying too. Then she left. The child walked back into the house before Clara could respond. Ethan's jaw worked like he was chewing nails. She doesn't understand death yet. She thinks Margaret abandoned her. Has anyone explained? I tried. Mrs. Patterson tried. She doesn't want to hear it. He picked up Clara's small trunk. You'll take the room on the left. Sophie sleeps in the room on the right. I sleep in the barn. The barn. I'm not sharing a bed with you. This is a business arrangement. You keep house help with Sophie, manage the household accounts. I work the ranch and keep Morrison's loan current. That's the extent of our agreement. He carried her trunk inside and left it in the doorway of her new room. When he walked back out, he didn't look at her. Clara stood in the main room of her new home, listening to her husband's boots cross the yard toward the barn, and wondered what kind of hell she'd just agreed to inhabit. So, the first week was warfare conducted in silence. Ethan left before dawn and returned after dark. Sophie watched Clara with the wariness of a cat deciding whether to trust a stranger. Clara cooked meals no one thanked her for, cleaned a house that fought back with accumulated dust and neglect, and slept in a bed that smelled like another woman's lavender soap. On the 8th day, she'd had enough. Ethan came in for supper and found Clara sitting at the table with his account ledgers spread out in front of her. What are you doing with those? Reading them. Sit down. Those are private. We're married. Your debts are my debts now. Sit down. Something in her voice made him obey. He sat across from her, his expression dark. Clara pushed the ledgers toward him. Morrison has been overcharging you for 3 years. Look at these interest calculations. He's adding compound interest on top of simple interest, then charging penalties on the compounded amount. This loan should be half what he claims you owe." Ethan grabbed the ledger, his eyes scanning the numbers. "I trusted his calculations. That was your first mistake. Your second was not reading the contract terms. Your third was agreeing to this marriage without negotiating better conditions." "Better conditions? He was taking my ranch." "He's still taking your ranch, just slower." Clara pulled out another document. "This extension he gave you, it's for 6 months at triple the interest rate. In 6 months you'll owe him more than you owe now. He's not saving you. He's bleeding you dry." Ethan's hands trembled as he read the extension terms. "That son of a—" "We need a lawyer, someone who can review these contracts and find the legal holes." "Lawyers cost money we don't have." "Then we find another way." Clara met his eyes. "I didn't marry you to watch Morrison steal everything you've built. If we're going to survive this, we survive it together. That means you stop treating me like furniture and start treating me like a partner." For the first time since the wedding, Ethan really looked at her. "Why do you care? You got what you needed: security, respectability, a roof over your head. I got a husband who sleeps in the barn, and a stepdaughter who thinks I'm temporary. I got a town that whispers spinster behind my back, and a banker who thinks he owns us both. What I don't have is a choice anymore. This is my life now. I'm going to make it worth living with or without your cooperation." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood up, grabbed the ledgers, and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" "To check something." He paused in the doorway. "My father kept copies of all Morrison's original loan documents in a lockbox. If you're right about the overcharges, we might have proof." He returned 2 hours later with a metal box full of papers. They stayed up until 3 in the morning, comparing documents, finding discrepancies, building a case against Morrison's calculations. By dawn, they had a list of 17 separate violations of Colorado lending law. This could get him disbarred from banking in the territory. Ethan said, his voice rough with exhaustion and something that might have been hope, "This could get us killed." Clara rubbed her eyes. "Morrison doesn't strike me as a man who accepts defeat gracefully." "What do you suggest?" "We need leverage, something that makes it more dangerous for him to fight us than to settle quietly." "What kind of leverage?" Clara thought for a moment. "Does Morrison have enemies in town? People he's crossed, other debtors he's squeezed?" "Half the county, but they're all too scared to stand against him. Then we make them less scared." Clara gathered the documents. "We start by filing a formal complaint with the Territorial Banking Commission. That creates an official record. Then we quietly let slip to Morrison's other debtors that we found discrepancies. If enough people start questioning their loans, Morrison will have a crisis on his hands." Ethan studied her like he'd never seen her before. "You're terrifying when you're strategic. I taught myself mathematics from books the school board said were too advanced for women. I manage a classroom of 30 children with 6 different reading levels and 4 languages. Strategy is how I survived every day before you married me." "Clara, don't." She cut him off. "Don't apologize for the marriage. Don't thank me for helping. We're trapped in this together. We either fight together or we drown separately. I prefer fighting." He nodded slowly. "Then we fight." The next morning, Clara walked into town and filed their complaint at the territorial office. The clerk's eyes widened as he read through their documentation. "Ma'am, are you certain you want to submit this? Mr. Morrison is a powerful man." "Mr. Morrison is a criminal who's been stealing from half the county. File it." She walked out of the office and straight into Harold Morrison on the boardwalk. "Mrs. Walker, how lovely to see you adapting to married life." "Mr. Morrison." Clara kept her voice level. "I trust your banking practices are equally well adapted to territorial law." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I have no idea what you mean." "Then I'm sure the Banking Commission's review will find everything in perfect order." Morrison's expression hardened. "You filed a complaint." "I filed 18 complaints. 1 for each violation of lending law I discovered in my husband's accounts." "You're making a grave mistake." "No, Mr. Morrison. You made the mistake when you assumed I was just a helpless spinster you could manipulate. I'm a school teacher. I know how to read. I know how to calculate. And I know how to recognize a fraud when I see one." She walked past him before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding, but she kept her spine straight and her steps steady. When she got back to the ranch, Ethan was waiting on the porch. "Morrison came by while you were gone. He threatened to call in the entire loan immediately." "Can he do that?" "According to the contract terms, yes. If we're in default, he can demand full payment within 30 days. Clara's stomach dropped. "We can't pay that." "No, we can't." Ethan's expression was grim. But he also said something interesting. He said if you withdraw the complaint, he'll honor the original extension terms. Lower interest rate, full 6 months. He's scared. What? He's offering a deal because he's scared of what we might find if we keep digging. If those violations existed in your contracts, they exist in dozens of others. He's trying to shut us up before this becomes a wildfire. Ethan leaned against the porch railing. "So, what do we do?" Clara thought fast. "We call his bluff. Tell him we'll withdraw the complaint in exchange for a complete audit of all his lending practices by an independent territorial examiner. If he's clean, he has nothing to worry about. If he refuses, it proves he's hiding something worse." That's insane. That's strategy. He's expecting us to back down. Instead, we push harder. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then started laughing. It was the first time she'd heard him laugh since the wedding. "What's funny, Morrison thought he was punishing me by forcing me to marry the town spinster. Instead, he gave me the smartest partner I've ever had." Something warm bloomed in Clara's chest at the word partner. She pushed it down ruthlessly. This wasn't romance. This was survival. She couldn't afford to confuse the two. "Tell Morrison we'll discuss his offer tomorrow. Give him time to sweat." Ethan nodded, still smiling. "Yes, ma'am." As he walked back toward the barn, Sophie appeared in the doorway. "Are you going to save the ranch?" Clara knelt down to the child's level. "Your father and I are going to try." "Papa says trying isn't the same as doing." "Your papa is right, but trying is where doing starts." Clara tucked a strand of hair behind Sophie's ear. "Are you hungry? I made bread this morning." For the first time, Sophie smiled at her. "I like bread." "Then come help me butter some slices, and you can tell me about school." As they walked inside together, Clara realized something had shifted. She wasn't fighting just for survival anymore. She was fighting for this little girl, for the man who slept in a barn, rather than face his grief for the ranch that represented everything they had left. Morrison had tried to trap her in a loveless marriage. Instead, he'd given her something to fight for. And Clara Whitmore had never lost a fight she truly cared about winning. Morrison showed up at dawn the next morning, his buggy kicking up dust as it barreled down the ranch road. Clara was feeding the chickens when she heard Ethan's voice rise from the barn. "Get off my property." "I'm here to discuss reasonable terms, Walker. Unless you'd prefer I call in the full loan today." Clara dropped the feed bucket and ran toward them. Morrison stood 10 feet from Ethan, 2 hired men flanking him like guard dogs. "Mrs. Walker, how delightful. Perhaps you can talk sense into your husband." "My husband and I speak with one voice, Mr. Morrison. If he wants you gone, so do I." Morrison's smile was cold. "Then let me be clear. Withdraw your complaint by noon or I file foreclosure papers this afternoon. You'll have 30 days to vacate." Ethan's hand moved toward the rifle propped against the barn door. Clara stepped between them. "File your foreclosure. We'll see you in court." "You can't afford a lawyer." "We don't need one. Territorial law allows debtors to represent themselves in lending disputes. I've read the statutes, every single one." Morrison's eye twitched. "You're bluffing." "Test me." For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then Morrison turned to his men. "Let's go. These fools want to destroy themselves. I'm happy to watch." His buggy disappeared in a cloud of dust. Ethan grabbed Clara's arm. "What the hell were you thinking?" "We can't fight this in court." "We can and we will." Clara. He's terrified, Ethan. Did you see his face? He brought hired muscle to intimidate us because he knows we're right. Men who have the law on their side don't need threats. He'll bury us, only if we let him. Clara pulled her arm free. I need to go into town, now. Why? Because if Morrison is this scared, there are other people who deserve to know why. She was already moving toward the house when Sophie called from the porch. Clara, wait. Your dress is all dusty. Clara looked down. Chicken feed covered her skirt. She'd run out here looking like a farm wife, not the schoolteacher who'd once commanded respect. Something about that felt right. Sophie, can you help me change quickly? I need to look respectable. The girl's face lit up. I can help. 15 minutes later, Clara rode into town, wearing her best dress, her hair pinned perfectly, her spine straight as iron. She tied her horse outside the general store and walked in like she owned the place. Mrs. Henderson looked up from the counter. Clara, I mean Mrs. Walker. What brings you? I need you to gather the Women's Church Auxiliary. Emergency meeting, 1 hour. Tell them it's about their family finances. I don't understand. Morrison has been overcharging debts across the county. My husband and I found proof. If your husband has a loan with Morrison's bank, you need to hear this. Mrs. Henderson's face went pale. George has a loan for the store expansion. Then you need to be there. Spread the word quietly. Morrison can't threaten all of us. Within the hour, 14 women packed into the church basement. Clara laid out copies of the documents she'd prepared, simple charts showing how compound interest worked versus how Morrison was calculating it. Ladies, I'm going to teach you basic mathematics. The kind the school board says women don't need to understand. The kind that's been stealing money from your families for years. She walked them through each calculation, showed them how to read their own loan documents, watched their faces shift from confusion to understanding to fury. Mrs. Patterson stood up first. Ethan's loan, Margaret's medical debts, Morrison added charges that were never discussed. My husband's equipment loan has penalties we never agreed to. Mrs. Henderson said, her voice shaking. One by one, the women spoke up. Every family had a story. Every loan had irregularities. Clara waited until the rage reached its peak. Morrison threatened to foreclose on the ranch if we don't withdraw our complaint. He's counting on us being too scared to fight. Are we? No. Mrs. Patterson's voice was steel. My daughter died in debt to that monster. I won't let him steal from her child too. Then here's what we do. Each of you takes these documents home, reviews your family's loans tonight. Tomorrow we meet again and compare findings. By the end of the week, we file a collective complaint. Strength in numbers. He'll retaliate, someone whispered. He's already retaliating. The question is whether we fight back. The vote was unanimous. Clara rode home feeling like she'd lit a fuse on a powder keg. Ethan was waiting on the porch, his expression unreadable. Morrison came back while you were gone. Made some new threats. Let me guess. Financial ruin, social destruction, physical harm. All three. Also said you're corrupting the town's women with dangerous ideas. Good. They need corrupting. Clara dismounted. The church auxiliary is reviewing their loan documents tonight. By tomorrow, we'll know how many families Morrison has been stealing from. Clara, this is getting dangerous. This got dangerous the moment Morrison forced us into marriage. We're just fighting back now. Sophie appeared in the doorway clutching a slate. Clara, I finished my arithmetic homework. Can you check it? Of course, sweetheart. Clara took the slate, scanning the problems. These are perfect. You're getting so good at this. Papa says numbers are important for running a ranch. Papa is right. Clara handed the slate back. Want to help me make supper? I could use an assistant. As Sophie nodded eagerly, Clara caught Ethan watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pain maybe, or regret. She turned away before it could hurt. That night after Sophie went to bed, Clara found Ethan in the barn going through more old documents. Find anything. Letters. From Morrison to my father. He's been planning this takeover for 5 years. Since before my father died. Clara took one of the letters. He wanted the ranch that badly. There's something here he wants. I just don't know what. Ethan rubbed his face. My father never said anything about Morrison pressuring him. Maybe he didn't want to worry you. Or maybe he was ashamed he couldn't stop it. Clara sat down on a hay bale across from him. My father died ashamed too. Ashamed he couldn't provide me with a dowry. Ashamed I became a spinster because no man would have me without money. He apologized on his deathbed for failing me. Ethan looked up. Did you forgive him? I told him there was nothing to forgive, that I'd made my own life and it was enough. She paused. I lied. It wasn't enough. But I needed him to die in peace. Clara, don't feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because shame is Morrison's weapon. He makes us feel like our failures define us. Like we deserve what he's doing. We don't. I failed Margaret. I couldn't save her or our son. Margaret died in childbirth. You're not God, Ethan. You couldn't have stopped that. I should have gotten the doctor sooner. Should have. Should have. Clara's voice was sharp. You can drown in should haves, or you can focus on what you can actually do now. Save this ranch. Protect Sophie. Stop Morrison from destroying more families. Those are things you can control. Ethan stared at her. You don't pull punches, do you? Life doesn't pull punches. Why should I? He almost smiled. Morrison really did make a mistake marrying us. Yes, he did. The moment stretched between them, something shifting in the air. Then Ethan stood abruptly. I should check the fence line before dark. It's already dark. Then I should have checked it earlier. He left before she could respond. Clara sat alone in the barn surrounded by the ghosts of other people's failures, and wondered if she'd pushed too hard. The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Judge Mitchell arrived in his official capacity looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Walker. Mr. Walker, I need to speak with you both. They gathered in the main room. The judge wouldn't meet their eyes. I've been asked to deliver a message from Mr. Morrison. He's willing to settle this dispute quietly. Complete forgiveness of your debt in exchange for the deed to your ranch. Absolutely not, Ethan said immediately. Hear me out. He'll give you 6 months to relocate, provide a stipend for your moving expenses, and guarantee no legal action against either of you. In exchange for everything my family built? No. Mr. Walker, I'm trying to help you. If this goes to court, Morrison has resources you can't match. He'll win, and you'll lose everything anyway. This way, you walk away with something. Clara had been silent, studying the judge's face. Now she spoke. What did Morrison promise you? I beg your pardon. You're not here as a neutral party. You're here as Morrison's messenger. What did he offer you? A reduced loan? A judgeship in the territorial court. What's your price, Judge Mitchell? The judge's face flushed. How dare you? I dare, because you're not even trying to hide it. You won't look at us. You're sweating. You delivered Morrison's offer like it was a court order instead of a bribe. This conversation is over. Mitchell stood. You have 24 hours to accept Morrison's settlement. After that, he proceeds with foreclosure. After he left, Ethan turned to Clara. You just accused a judge of corruption. He is corrupt. Proof? His hands were shaking. His pupils were dilated. He's terrified of Morrison, which means Morrison has leverage on him too. That doesn't help us. Actually, it does. Clara was already moving toward the papers they'd been collecting. If Morrison owns the judge, he owns the court, which means we can't win through the legal system. Then how? We go over his head, straight to the territorial governor's office. Ethan stared at her. You want to take on the governor? I want to give the governor a reason to take on Morrison. Corruption charges against a judge and a banker. That's political gold for a governor looking to clean up the territory. That's insane. That's our only option. Clara found the letter she was looking for. Morrison sent this to your father 3 years ago. Look at the signature. He doesn't just sign as a banker, he signs as the county treasurer. So he's been managing public funds while simultaneously running a private bank. That's a conflict of interest at minimum, embezzlement at worst. If we can prove he's been mixing county money with his personal business, the governor would have to investigate. Exactly. Ethan grabbed her shoulders suddenly. Clara Whitmore Walker, you are the most dangerous woman I've ever met. The use of her full married name sent a jolt through her. His hands were warm on her shoulders. His eyes were bright with something that looked almost like admiration. She stepped back before she could do something stupid. We need to move fast. Morrison's 24-hour deadline means he's desperate. Agreed. I'll ride to the territorial office in Denver. File the complaint directly. That's 2 days of travel. Morrison will foreclose before you get back. Then we split up. You stay here and hold the ranch. I'll go to Denver. Ethan, I can't. You've been running this household for weeks. You can handle 2 days alone. It's not the household I'm worried about. It's Morrison. Take the rifle. Keep Sophie close. Lock the doors at night. He was already grabbing his coat. I'll leave within the hour. Wait. Clara caught his arm. If Morrison's men come while you're gone, shoot first. Ask questions later. I'm serious. So am I. Ethan met her eyes. You're my wife. This is your home. Defend it. He left her standing there, her heart pounding, his trust sitting on her shoulders like a weight she wasn't sure she could carry. 2 hours later, she watched him ride out headed for Denver, with documents that could destroy Morrison, or get them both killed. Sophie stood next to her on the porch. Is Papa coming back? Yes, sweetheart. He'll be back in a few days. Mama said she'd come back too. Clara knelt down, taking Sophie's small hands. Your mama wanted to come back. She loved you more than anything. Sometimes, though, people can't keep their promises even when they want to. Your papa will keep his promise. I promise you that. What if he doesn't? Then you and I will figure out what to do next. Together. Sophie studied her face. You're scared. I'm terrified. But you're staying anyway. I'm staying anyway. The child wrapped her arms around Clara's neck. I'm glad you're here. Clara held her, this little girl who'd lost so much, and felt her own eyes burn. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That night, Clara locked every door and window, loaded the rifle and propped it next to her bed, lay awake listening to every creak of the house, settling every rustle of wind through the trees. Morning came with a knock at the door. Clara grabbed the rifle and peered through the window. Mrs. Patterson stood on the porch alone. Clara, open up. It's important. Clara unlocked the door, rifle still in hand. What happened? The Women's Auxiliary met again last night. We reviewed 14 family loans. All of them have the same irregularities you found. That's good. That's evidence. Morrison found out. He's calling in every loan, all of them. 30 days to pay in full or face foreclosure. Mrs. Patterson's voice broke. He's going to destroy every family that supported you. Clara's blood went cold. When did he announce this? This morning. Posted notices at the bank. The whole town is in a panic. He's trying to isolate us, make it too expensive for anyone to stand with us. It's working. Half the women are talking about withdrawing from the complaint. Their husbands are furious. They're blaming you for stirring up trouble. Clara set down the rifle carefully. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to be honest. Do you regret helping us? No, but I'm scared. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. Clara grabbed her coat. Get the women together again. Tell them I'm calling an emergency meeting, today, noon, and tell them to bring their husbands this time. Clara, they're angry. Then let them be angry at me face to face, instead of behind my back. Noon. Don't be late. Clara rode into town with Sophie sitting in front of her on the saddle. She wasn't leaving the child alone on the ranch, and she wasn't backing down from this fight. The church was packed. Angry men, frightened women, children sensing the tension. Clara stood at the front with Sophie by her side and waited for the shouting to die down. You did this. George Henderson pointed at her. My loan was fine until you started making trouble. Your loan was illegal before I said a word. Morrison was stealing from you. I just helped you see it. Now he's taking everything. He's threatening to take everything. That's different. How is that different? Someone yelled from the back. Because threats only work if we believe them. Morrison is one man. We are... Clara counted quickly. 37 families. If all of us default at once, his bank collapses. He can't foreclose on everyone. He doesn't have the resources. The room went silent. You're saying we should all refuse to pay? Mrs. Patterson asked carefully. I'm saying we form a debtors' coalition. Collectively renegotiate our loans at fair terms. If Morrison refuses, we default together and force the Territorial Banking Commission to intervene. His illegal practices get exposed either way. That's financial suicide, George Henderson said, but he sounded less certain. No, this is financial warfare. Morrison thinks we'll panic and turn on each other. Prove him wrong. A rancher Clara didn't know stood up. What's to stop him from sending men to take our properties by force? Territorial law, the governor's office, public scrutiny. Clara paused. And the fact that 37 armed families defending their homes is a lot harder to intimidate than one. You're asking us to bet everything on a strategy that might not work. I'm asking you to stop letting Morrison steal from you. The choice is yours. The debate raged for an hour. Voices rose, tempers flared. Sophie pressed against Clara's side, scared but silent. Finally, Mrs. Patterson stood. I'm in. My family has already lost everything that matters. I'm not giving Morrison one more penny. I'm in, Mrs. Henderson said quietly. One by one, voices joined. Not everyone. 6 families walked out refusing to participate, but 29 stayed. Clara looked at their faces and saw her own fear reflected back. We meet here every morning, share information, support each other, stay strong. Morrison wins if we fracture. We win if we stand together. As the crowd dispersed, a man Clara didn't recognize approached her. Mrs. Walker, I'm Thomas Grant. I run the newspaper. I know who you are. I'd like to run a story about this debtors' coalition. Public pressure might help your cause. Clara studied him. Or it might give Morrison advance warning of our strategy. I'm not on Morrison's payroll, if that's what you're implying. Unlike Judge Mitchell. You know about the judge. I know Morrison owns half this town through debt and blackmail. I've been waiting for someone brave enough to fight back. Grant pulled out a notepad. Give me the story. Let me help you. Clara made a decision that would either save them or destroy them. Print this. Morrison has been systematically defrauding debtors across the county through illegal lending practices. We have documentation. We've filed complaints with the Territorial Banking Commission. If the governor's office wants the evidence, they can contact me directly. Grant scribbled frantically. This will run in tomorrow's edition. Make sure it does. As she walked back to her horse, Sophie tugged her sleeve. Clara, are we going to be okay? Clara picked her up, holding her tight. I don't know, sweetheart. But we're going to fight like hell to make sure we are. The ride home felt longer than it should have. Clara kept scanning the horizon for Morrison's men. Kept the rifle loaded across her lap. Kept Sophie close. When they reached the ranch, smoke was rising from the barn. Clara's heart stopped. She pushed Sophie toward the house. Run inside. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. She grabbed the rifle and ran toward the barn. The door was open. Inside, someone had piled hay in the center and lit it on fire. Clara didn't think. She grabbed buckets and started hauling water from the well. The fire was small, contained more threat than actual danger. She doused it in 10 minutes, coughing from smoke, her hands blistered from the hot bucket handles. A piece of paper was nailed to the barn door. Clara pulled it down with shaking hands. Withdraw or watch everything burn. You have until your husband returns. M. She stood there covered in soot and ash, her hands bleeding. Her daughter terrified in the house, her husband 2 days away in Denver, and felt rage unlike anything she'd ever known. Morrison wanted war. He was about to get it. Clara walked into the house, locked the door, and found Sophie crying in the corner. The barn was on fire. I saw the smoke. It's out. We're safe. Clara set the rifle down and pulled the girl into her arms. Listen to me. We're not leaving. We're not giving up. Do you understand? Sophie nodded against her shoulder. I'm scared. Good. That means you're smart. Clara pulled back to look at her. But being scared and being defeated are different things. We're scared, but we're staying. Say it with me. We're staying. We're staying, Sophie whispered. Louder. We're staying. Like you mean it. We're staying. Sophie's voice cracked, but held strong. Clara hugged her again, then stood up. Now, here's what we're going to do. You're going to help me pack our important papers in this saddlebag. If Morrison comes back, we might need to run fast. Can you do that? Yes. While Sophie gathered documents, Clara checked every window lock, every door bolt. She moved ammunition within reach, filled water buckets in case of another fire. By sunset, the ranch was a fortress. They ate cold supper because Clara didn't trust lighting the stove, sat in the dark because candles made them targets. When Sophie finally fell asleep, Clara kept watch by the window rifle across her lap, waiting for Morrison's next move. It came at dawn. 3 riders approached the house. Not Morrison's usual hired men. These were rougher, meaner. Clara recognized one from the saloon, a drifter who'd been run out of town twice for fighting. She opened the door before they could knock, rifle aimed at the lead rider's chest. Whatever Morrison's paying you, it's not worth dying for. The man smiled, showing broken teeth. Morrison said you'd be difficult. Said to deliver a message personal-like. Deliver it from there. He wants the deed to this property by noon today, signed and notarized. You bring it to his office yourself, or we come back tonight with torches and friends. Tell Morrison if he wants this property, he can pry it from my dead hands. That can be arranged, ma'am. Clara cocked the rifle. I taught myself to shoot when I was 12 years old. My father said a woman alone needed to protect herself. I can hit a playing card at 50 yards. How confident are you that I'll miss at 10? The men exchanged looks. The leader backed his horse up slowly. Noon, Mrs. Walker. Don't be late. After they left, Clara's hands started shaking so badly she had to set the rifle down. Sophie appeared in the doorway. Clara, who were those men? Bad people doing bad things for money. Are they coming back? Probably. Clara forced herself to breathe steadily. Which is why we're not staying here tonight. Get dressed. We're going into town. But Papa said to defend the ranch. I'm defending it by making sure you're safe first. Move. They packed quickly. Clara left the rifle propped by the door, obvious visible a warning. She locked every entrance and rode into town with Sophie heading straight for Mrs. Patterson's house. The older woman opened the door, took one look at Clara's face, and pulled them inside. What happened? Morrison sent men, threatened to burn us out tonight if I don't surrender the deed by noon. Dear God, I need you to keep Sophie safe. I'm going to Morrison's office. Alone? That's suicide. No, that's calling his bluff. Clara knelt in front of Sophie. You stay with Mrs. Patterson. Don't leave this house. I'll be back before supper. You promise? Clara hesitated. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. You're lying. Just like Mama. You're going away and not coming back. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Clara grabbed Sophie's shoulders. Listen to me. Your mother didn't lie. She didn't want to leave you. Sometimes life takes choices away from us. But I'm choosing to come back. I'm choosing to fight. And I'm choosing to be here for you. That's a promise I can keep. What if you can't? Then Mrs. Patterson will take care of you until your father returns. But I will come back, Sophie. I swear it on everything I have. She left before she could second-guess herself. Rode into town at mid-morning, hitched her horse outside Morrison's bank, and walked in like she owned the place. Morrison was in his office. His eyebrows rose when he saw her. Mrs. Walker, I expected you earlier. I'm early. You said noon. It's 11. Indeed. Do you have the deed? I have a counteroffer. Clara sat down uninvited. You drop all foreclosure proceedings against every family in the debtors' coalition. You renegotiate their loans at fair terms. You submit to a territorial audit of your banking practices. In exchange, I don't tell the governor's office about your arson attempt last night. Morrison's smile didn't waver. I have no idea what you're talking about. Your men left a note, your handwriting, signed with your initial. That's evidence. Evidence of what a piece of paper anyone could have written. Evidence that will look very bad when combined with 14 fraudulent loan documents, a corrupt judge on your payroll, and 37 families willing to testify against you. Morrison leaned back in his chair. You're bluffing. You have nothing. Then call my bluff. Let's both go to the territorial courthouse right now and see who the commission believes. For the first time, Morrison's smile slipped. You're making a serious mistake, Mrs. Walker. No, Mr. Morrison. You made the mistake when you assumed I was powerless. I'm a school teacher. I've been underestimated my entire life. I'm used to fighting from a disadvantage. You're not. And that's why you're going to lose. She stood and walked out before he could respond. Her hands didn't start shaking until she was back on her horse. The newspaper office was 3 doors down. Clara rode there next. Thomas Grant looked up from his desk ink, staining his fingers. Mrs. Walker, I was hoping you'd stop by. Tomorrow's edition is already set, but I can hold the press for breaking news. Morrison sent arsonists to my ranch last night. Threatened to burn it down if I don't surrender the property by noon today. Grant's pen was already moving. Can you prove it? Clara pulled out Morrison's note. His handwriting, his signature, threatening violence against a woman and child. This is front-page material. Morrison will come after me for printing it. He's already coming after you. The question is whether you hit him first. Grant read the note 3 times. I'll need to verify the handwriting. I have other documents signed by Morrison, loan papers, official bank correspondence. Compare them yourself. For the next hour, Grant examined every piece of evidence Clara had brought. Finally, he set down his magnifying glass. It's a match. This will destroy him. Only if people read it. Can you distribute copies outside Silver Creek? Other towns. The territorial capital. I have contacts in Denver, Georgetown, Leadville. If I send the story by telegraph, it'll be in 6 newspapers by tomorrow morning. Do it! Grant started writing furiously. Clara watched the words take shape, her story, her fight becoming public record. Mrs. Walker, one more question. Are you prepared for what happens when this Prince Morrison won't go quietly? Morrison hasn't done anything quietly since this started. I'm done being quiet too. She left Grant's office and rode to the church. The debtors' coalition was meeting again daily now as Morrison's pressure increased. 29 families gathered in frightened clusters arguing about whether to hold the line. Clara walked to the front. Morrison threatened to burn my ranch last night unless I surrender the property. I refused. He's escalating because we're winning. Winning? George Henderson stood up. We're about to lose everything. We're about to expose him. Tomorrow's newspaper will print his threat, his handwriting, his confession to arson and extortion. Every newspaper in the territory will carry the story. The governor will have to act. Or Morrison will have us all killed before the governor even reads it, someone muttered. Then we protect each other. Clara's voice cut through the murmuring. We don't sleep alone tonight. Every family pairs up, safety in numbers. Morrison's men are bullies and cowards. They won't attack houses full of armed families. Mrs. Patterson stood. We'll pair up with the Hendersons. They have teenage sons who can keep watch. We'll take the Mitchells, another woman offered. The pairing spread through the room. Families linking together, creating a network of protection. Clara felt something shift, fear transforming into determination. After the meeting, Mrs. Patterson pulled Clara aside. What you're doing is either brilliant or insane. Probably both. Where will you and Sophie stay tonight? With you if you'll have us. I don't trust going back to the ranch yet. Of course, But Clara, what happens when Ethan returns and finds out what you've been doing? Clara's chest tightened. He told me to defend our home. I'm defending it. By starting a war with the most powerful man in the county. Morrison started this war. I'm just refusing to surrender. That night, Clara and Sophie slept in Mrs. Patterson's spare room. Or tried to sleep. Clara lay awake listening for sounds of trouble, wondering if Ethan had reached Denver, if the governor's office would care if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Sophie's small voice cut through the darkness. Clara, are you awake? Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you married Papa. Clara's throat tightened. Even though it's been scary. Especially because it's been scary. You don't run away when things get bad. Mama couldn't help leaving. But you're choosing to stay. Your mama loved you more than anything, Sophie. I know, but she's gone. You're here. That matters too. Clara pulled the child close, fighting tears. You matter to me, Sophie, more than I expected, more than is probably smart. Why isn't it smart to care about people? Because caring makes you vulnerable. Makes it hurt more when you lose them. But it also makes it better when you keep them. That's what Mrs. Patterson says. Clara smiled in the darkness. Mrs. Patterson is smarter than both of us. Morning brought Thomas Grant banging on the door, newspapers in hand. Clara opened the door to find him grinning like a madman. It's everywhere. Every paper in the territory picked up the story. Morrison's threat, the fraudulent loans, the coalition. It's all there. Clara grabbed a paper, scanning the headline. Banking corruption exposed, Silver Creek families fight back against systematic fraud. The governor's office sent a telegram this morning. They're sending investigators. Should arrive by week's end. Clara's knees went weak. We did it. You did it. You just took down the most powerful man in the county using nothing but mathematics and courage. Morrison won't see it that way. He'll retaliate. Let him try. The whole territory is watching now. Grant left to distribute more papers. Clara dressed quickly, her mind racing through next steps. They needed to hold Morrison off for one more week. Just 7 days until investigators arrived. 7 days to keep everyone safe. She was planning defensive strategy when hoofbeats thundered up the street. Clara grabbed Sophie and ran to the window. Ethan. Riding hard, his horse lathered and exhausted. Clara flew out the door. Ethan. He dismounted before his horse fully stopped, grabbing her shoulders. Are you hurt? Is Sophie safe? I saw the newspaper in Georgetown. We're fine. Both fine. Clara couldn't stop staring at him. You came back early. The governor's office fast-tracked our complaint when I showed them your evidence. They're sending investigators immediately. I rode through the night to get here. His eyes searched her face. Clara, what the hell have you been doing? Defending our home, like you told me to. I told you to lock the doors and stay safe, not declare war on Morrison. Morrison declared war first. I just fought back. Ethan's hands tightened on her shoulders. He threatened to burn you out. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. I'm right here. You should have run. Taken Sophie and hidden somewhere safe. There is no safe place, Ethan. Not while Morrison controls this county. Running wouldn't have solved anything. Neither does getting yourself killed. I'm not dead. I'm standing right here. We're winning. Ethan pulled her against his chest suddenly, his arms crushing her close. Don't ever scare me like that again. Clara stood frozen, shocked by the embrace. She could feel his heart pounding, feel his fear and relief bleeding through the anger. Slowly, she let her arms come up around him. I'm sorry. No, you're not. No, I'm not. She pulled back to look at him. But I am glad you're home. His eyes held hers for a long moment. Something passed between them, something that made Clara's breath catch. Then Sophie came running out, and the moment broke. Papa, you're back. Ethan scooped her up, holding her tight. I'm back, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I left you. Clara protected us. She was really brave. I heard. Ethan's eyes found Clara's over Sophie's head. She's terrifying when she's brave, The morning brought news that spread through town like wildfire. Morrison's bank was closed. A notice on the door said it was temporary for inventory purposes. But everyone knew the truth. Morrison was scrambling. By afternoon, the man himself appeared on Main Street, looking nothing like the polished banker who'd orchestrated their forced marriage. His clothes were rumpled. His eyes were wild. He stopped Clara and Ethan outside the general store. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Clara said calmly. "The investigators arrive in 5 days. Your illegal practices are documented. Your threats are public record. You're finished. You destroyed me. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it." Morrison's hand moved toward his jacket. Ethan stepped in front of Clara, his own hand on his holstered gun. "Don't. You think you've won, you've made an enemy of a desperate man. That's the most dangerous kind. Then arrest me, Mr. Morrison. Call the sheriff. Press charges." "Oh wait, you can't because the sheriff is one of the families in our coalition. He's been reviewing his own loan documents. Turns out you've been overcharging him too." Morrison's face went purple. "You manipulated everyone." "I taught them mathematics. That's all. They manipulated themselves once they understood how you'd been stealing from them for years." For a moment, Clara thought Morrison might actually attack them. Then Judge Mitchell appeared looking gray and shaken. "Harold, we need to talk. Privately." Morrison let Mitchell pull him away. Clara watched them go, her heart still racing. Ethan's hand found hers. "You just backed a dangerous man into a corner." "I know. He could do anything now." "I know that too." "And you're not scared?" Clara looked at their joined hands. "I'm terrified, but I'm also done letting fear control my choices." That evening, the coalition gathered at the church for what they all hoped would be the final meeting before the investigators arrived. Clara stood before them exhausted but determined. "Morrison is desperate. That makes him unpredictable. For the next 5 days, we stay vigilant. Stay paired up. Keep watch. Don't give him opportunities for retaliation." "What if he runs?" someone asked. "Then he runs. Either way, the investigation proceeds. The loans get reviewed. The coalition gets justice." "What about you, Mrs. Walker? You're the one who started this. He'll come after you first." "Let him try." Ethan's voice cut through the room. He stood next to Clara, solid and steady. "My wife isn't facing this alone. None of us are. We stand together or we fall separately. I'm standing with Clara." One by one, voices joined. "We stand with Clara. We're with you." Together. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. These people who'd whispered about her, pitied her, dismissed her as a spinster, were now calling her by name and standing with her. After the meeting, as families dispersed to their paired houses, Ethan pulled Clara aside. "We need to talk about us." Clara's stomach flipped. "Ethan, I've been sleeping in the barn for weeks, treating you like a business arrangement, acting like this marriage was just a transaction. It was a transaction. Morrison forced us together. He forced the ceremony. He didn't force what happened after." Ethan stepped closer. "You've been running my household, protecting my daughter, fighting my battles, being my partner in ways I never asked for or expected. That's not a transaction. That's a marriage. We barely know each other. I know you're braver than anyone I've ever met. I know you care about Sophie like she's your own. I know you took on Morrison and the whole damn county to protect a ranch you've only lived in for a month." He paused. "I know I don't want to sleep in that barn anymore." Clara's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I married you under duress, but I'd marry you again by choice. I'm saying you're not the burden Morrison meant you to be. You're the best thing that's happened to me since Margaret died." His voice roughened. "I'm saying I think I'm falling in love with you, and I have no idea what to do about it." Clara stared at him, her world tilting. "Ethan, you're grieving. You're grateful I helped with Morrison. That's not love." "Don't tell me what I feel. Don't confuse gratitude with something deeper." "I'm not confused." He caught her hand. "I've been confused for 2 years, drowning in grief and guilt and debt. You showed up and pulled me back to shore. That's not gratitude. That's partnership, respect, maybe even friendship. But love? Why not love? Because we've known each other for 1 month. Because you're still mourning your wife. Because this started as a trap, and I won't let you mistake escape for affection. Ethan's jaw clenched. You think I'm that weak that I can't tell the difference? I think you're human. I think you're vulnerable. I think Morrison forced us together, and now we're in crisis mode, and emotions are running high. That's not a foundation for love. Then what would be a foundation in your opinion? Time. Peace. Actually knowing each other outside of constant danger. So you feel nothing. This is all just survival to you. The question cut deep. Clara pulled her hand free. What I feel doesn't matter. We need to focus on getting through the next 5 days. After that, after Morrison is dealt with and the ranch is safe, we can discuss what this marriage actually is. Clara. I mean it, Ethan. Let's survive first. Feel later. She walked away before he could argue, her heart hammering her emotions a tangled mess. Because the truth was, she did feel something. Had been feeling it for weeks. But admitting it while their lives were in danger felt like tempting fate. Like counting chickens before they hatched. Like believing in fairy tales when reality kept proving how brutal life could be. That night, back at Mrs. Patterson's house, Clara couldn't sleep. Sophie was curled against her, breathing softly. The ranch was locked up tight. The coalition was organized. The investigators were coming. Everything was proceeding according to plan. So why did she feel like they were standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for someone to push? The answer came at 3 a.m. when flames lit up the night sky. The ranch was burning. Clara grabbed Sophie and ran, boots barely on her feet. Mrs. Patterson already throwing open the door. The orange glow painted the night sky like a second sunrise. Stay here with Sophie, Clara shouted, already running toward her horse. Clara, wait! But she was gone, riding bareback through town, her nightdress billowing her heart in her throat. Other riders joined her, men from the coalition, who'd seen the flames, women who'd grabbed their husbands' rifles, families who'd decided enough was enough. Ethan reached the ranch first. Clara found him standing in the yard staring at the house. The entire structure was engulfed, flames eating through the roof windows, exploding from the heat. Ethan, everything. His voice was hollow. Every photograph of Margaret, Sophie's baby clothes, my father's letters, everything. Clara dismounted, her hands finding his. We're alive. Sophie is safe. That's what matters. This was my family's legacy. 3 generations built this ranch. Then we'll build a 4th. Clara squeezed his hands. The land is still here. The barn is intact. We can rebuild. With what money Morrison destroyed the house? He probably burned the legal documents too. He didn't. Thomas Grant rode up holding a leather satchel. I have copies of everything. Every loan document, every piece of evidence. I made duplicates before I ran the story. They're safe. Ethan turned to him. Why would you? Because I've been watching Morrison steal from this town for 5 years. Watching good people lose everything while he got richer. You and Clara are the first ones who fought back. I'm not letting him destroy that fight. More coalition families arrived. Mrs. Henderson brought blankets. George Henderson and his sons started organizing bucket lines even though the house was clearly lost. Mrs. Patterson rode up with Sophie, who broke free and ran to her father. Papa, is our house gone? Ethan caught her, holding her tight. The house is gone. But we're not. We're still here. Where will we live? We'll figure it out, sweetheart. Sheriff Tom Douglas arrived last, his badge catching the firelight. He'd been part of the coalition from the start, one of Morrison's victims who'd finally had enough. He walked around the house examining the burn patterns, then came back to Ethan and Clara. This was deliberate. Multiple points of origin. Accelerant used. Someone wanted this house to burn fast and hot. Morrison, Clara said. Probably. But I need proof. Witnesses. Something that will hold up when the territorial investigators get here. How about a confession? Mrs. Patterson's voice cut through the crowd. She held up a piece of paper. I found this nailed to my front door. Must have been put there while we were all rushing to the fire." Clara took the paper, her hands shaking. The handwriting was Morrison's. "You wanted war, Mrs. Walker. Now you have it. Every family that stands with you will burn. One house tonight, more tomorrow. Keep fighting and I'll reduce this entire town to ash. The choice is yours." Sheriff Douglas read it, his face hardening. "That's a direct threat. Signed confession to arson and terrorist threats. This is enough to arrest him." "Then do it," Ethan said. "I will. But Clara, you need to understand, once I arrest Morrison, his allies will retaliate. Judge Mitchell, the town council members on his payroll, half the businessmen who owe him favors. This gets ugly fast." "It's already ugly," Clara said. "Arrest him." Douglas nodded and rode toward town. The coalition families stayed, helping Ethan salvage what little could be saved from the barn and outbuildings. Clara worked alongside them, her mind racing through contingencies and backup plans. Dawn came with news that made everything worse. Morrison was gone. Sheriff Douglas returned empty-handed, furious. "His house is cleared out. His office at the bank is stripped. He left sometime between the fire and my arrival. Probably fled the territory. So he gets away with everything." George Henderson's voice rose. "He destroys our lives and just runs. The investigators are still coming. His records are still here. We can still prove the fraud and get the loans annulled. But Morrison himself escapes justice. Unless we find him first." Clara's voice was quiet, but deadly. "Sheriff, can you organize a search party?" "For what? He's got hours of head start. Could be in 3 different states by now." "He's not in 3 different states. He's close." Clara turned to Ethan. "Your father's letters, the ones Morrison sent 5 years ago. What did they say about the ranch? What was Morrison really after?" Ethan's eyes widened. "The mineral rights. My father did a survey before he died, found signs of silver deposits in the eastern pasture. He never filed the claim because he couldn't afford the development costs. Morrison knew about it. Morrison was the one who paid for the survey. He and my father were supposed to be partners. Then my father died suddenly, and Morrison started pressuring me for loan repayment." Clara grabbed Sheriff Douglas's arm. "Morrison's not running. He's going to the eastern pasture to file that mineral claim himself. If he stakes it before we can prove fraud, he'll own the rights regardless of what happens to the bank. The Territorial Claims Office is in Georgetown. That's a 2-day ride. For us. Morrison left hours ago with fresh horses. He'll be there by tomorrow afternoon." Clara was already moving toward her horse. "We need to leave now." "Clara, you can't," Ethan started. "I can and I will. That mineral claim is the real prize. Everything else was just Morrison positioning himself to steal it. If he files that claim, even exposing his fraud won't get it back. Mineral rights supersede property ownership in territorial law." "Then I'm coming with you." "Someone needs to stay with Sophie. Mrs. Patterson can watch her. I'm not letting you chase Morrison alone. This isn't a debate." "You're right, it's not." Ethan's voice was steel. "We're partners. You said so yourself. Partners don't let each other ride into danger alone." Sheriff Douglas interrupted. "I'll organize a proper posse. Give us an hour to gather men and supplies." "We don't have an hour. Morrison gets that claim filed, this is over." Clara swung onto her horse. "Ethan, if you're coming, we leave now." They left Sophie crying in Mrs. Patterson's arms, rode out with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and determination sharp as knives. The eastern pasture was 3 hours away. The trail to Georgetown started there. They pushed the horses hard, eating up miles in tense silence. Clara's mind ran calculations, time, distance, probability. If Morrison had left immediately after setting the fire, he had a 4-hour lead. But he was older, probably not riding as hard. They might catch him before he reached Georgetown. Might. The word tasted like ash. "Clara." Ethan's voice broke her thoughts. "What you said last night, about us needing time and peace to figure out what this marriage is. Now is not the time. Now might be the only time. If Morrison gets that claim, we lose everything. The ranch, the mineral rights, our ability to rebuild. We'll have nothing left but each other and Sophie. So I need you to know that's enough for me. You and Sophie. Even without the ranch, even without the money, that's enough. More than enough. Clara's throat tightened. Don't talk like we've already lost. I'm not. I'm talking like I've already won, because I have you. Whatever else happens today, I have that. Ethan, I love you. I'm saying it now because I should have said it weeks ago. I love your courage and your mathematics and the way you refuse to back down even when you're terrified. I love that you chose to stay when you could have run. I love that Sophie lights up when you're near. I love... Stop. Clara's voice cracked. Please stop. Why? Because if you keep talking like that, I'll start believing in fairy tales. And fairy tales don't survive in the real world. This isn't a fairy tale. This is two people who got forced together and chose to stay together. That's the opposite of a fairy tale. That's real. They rode in silence after that, but Ethan's words hung between them like a promise or a threat, or maybe both. The eastern pasture came into view. Clara pulled up short. What's wrong? Look! She pointed to fresh tracks in the dirt. Multiple horses. Morrison didn't come alone. How many? 4, maybe 5. He brought backup. Then we're outnumbered. We're always outnumbered. That hasn't stopped us yet. They followed the tracks to a narrow canyon pass, the only route to the Georgetown Trail. Clara's instincts screamed trap, but there was no other way forward. The ambush came halfway through the canyon. Mrs. Walker. Mr. Walker. How kind of you to join us. Morrison's voice echoed off the rocks. He appeared on a ledge above them, flanked by 4 armed men. I was hoping you'd figure it out. Makes this so much more satisfying. Clara kept her voice steady. You can't file that mineral claim, Morrison. The fraud investigation will invalidate any paperwork you submit. Perhaps. But by the time that investigation concludes, I'll have already sold the rights to a mining company. They'll develop the claim, and even if it's later found fraudulent, the damage will be done. Lawsuits take years. I'll be long gone with the money. That's your plan. Destroy an entire town for a silver deposit that might not even be profitable. That silver deposit is worth $500,000 conservatively. Yes, Mrs. Walker, that's exactly my plan. Ethan's hand moved toward his gun. Morrison's men raised their rifles. Don't be foolish, Walker. You're outgunned and outmaneuvered again. Then what do you want? Clara asked. For you to watch. I want you to witness me filing that claim knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. I want you to understand that all your clever schemes and coalition building and newspaper stories meant nothing in the end. I still win. Why go to such lengths just to hurt us? Morrison's face twisted. Because you humiliated me. You, a spinster schoolteacher nobody wanted, made me look like a fool in front of the entire territory. You cost me my reputation, my standing, my power. So yes, I'm going to take everything you have and make you watch while I do it. Then you've already lost, Clara said quietly. How do you figure? Because everything I have isn't land or money or mineral rights. Everything I have is right here. She gestured to Ethan. You can file your claim. Take the silver. Burn every building in Silver Creek. You still can't take what actually matters to me. You never could. Morrison's smile faltered. We'll see about that. Men keep them here until I return from Georgetown. If they try to leave, shoot them. He rode off with 2 of his men. The other 2 stayed rifles trained on Clara and Ethan. Now what? Ethan murmured. Now we wait for Sheriff Douglas. You sent for him. No. But Mrs. Patterson saw us leave. She's smart enough to send him after us. Clara kept her voice low, barely moving her lips. We just need to buy time. How much time? However long it takes. One of Morrison's men shifted his weight. No talking. Just asking my husband a question about our daughter. That allowed. Make it quick. Clara turned to Ethan, raising her voice slightly. When we get home, we need to tell Sophie about the mineral claim. Explain why her grandfather never filed it. Ethan caught on. My father said the deposit was in the eastern pasture, near the old oak tree. The one by the creek that's on our property, not disputed land. Exactly. which means Morrison needs our signatures to file the claim legally. The property deed lists the mineral rights separately. One of the guards straightened. That's not Morrison said. Morrison lied to you. Check the deed yourself. It's public record. The two men exchanged looks. One of them lowered his rifle slightly. If we're holding you for nothing. You're holding us so Morrison can commit fraud. When the territorial investigators arrive tomorrow, they'll arrest everyone involved, including you. He said this was legal. He said a lot of things. How much is he paying you? $50 each. $50 to face federal fraud charges and possible prison time. That's a bargain. The men were wavering. Clara pressed harder. Here's what I'm offering. You let us go right now, you ride to Silver Creek with us, and you testify against Morrison. In exchange, Sheriff Douglas grants you immunity. You walk away free. We can't trust you. You can trust that Morrison won't come back for you. He's going to Georgetown to file that claim, and then he's leaving the territory. You think he's coming back to pay you $50? He's abandoning you just like he abandoned everyone else. One of the men cursed. Sam, she's right. Morrison's running. He's not coming back. We don't know that. We do know it. Look at what he did. Burned a house, threatened a whole town. Man like that doesn't stick around to face consequences. They were arguing now, rifles pointing at the ground instead of at Clara and Ethan. Clara caught Ethan's eye, saw him tense, ready to move. Then hoofbeats thundered from the canyon entrance. Sheriff Douglas rode in with a 10-man posse, weapons drawn. Drop your rifles now! Morrison's men surrendered without a fight. Douglas dismounted, grinning. Mrs. Patterson sent me. Said you two rode off like hell itself was chasing you. Morrison's heading to Georgetown to file a fraudulent mineral claim. We need to catch him before he gets there. Already handled. I telegraphed ahead. The claims office has orders to reject any filing from Harold Morrison pending investigation. He can ride there all he wants. Won't do him any good. Clara felt her knees go weak. It's over. Not quite. We still need to arrest Morrison himself. But the claim is blocked. The fraud investigation is active, and half the county is ready to testify against him. He's done. Ethan caught Clara as she swayed. You all right? We won. We actually won. You won. I just rode along. Clara laughed, the sound bordering on hysteria. We both won. Together. The ride back to Silver Creek took hours. Morrison's two men rode with them, agreeing to testify in exchange for immunity. Sheriff Douglas sent riders to intercept Morrison before he reached Georgetown. By the time they arrived home, the coalition had gathered again. Someone had set up tents near where the house had stood. Families brought food, blankets, supplies. Sophie ran to meet them, Mrs. Patterson right behind her. Papa, Clara, you're back. Ethan swept her up. We're back, sweetheart, and we're safe. Morrison can't hurt us anymore. Really, truly. Really, truly. Thomas Grant pushed through the crowd. Territorial investigators arrived early. They're at the bank now seizing records. Word is Morrison's been embezzling county funds for years. This is bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Federal charges, multi-territory investigation. Morrison's not just losing his bank, he's facing prison. Decades of it. Clara felt Ethan's hand find hers. They'd started this fight just trying to save one ranch. Now they'd uncovered corruption that spanned the entire territory. What happens to our loans? Someone in the crowd asked. Sheriff Douglas stepped forward. The investigators are reviewing every loan Morrison issued. Fraudulent ones will be annulled. Legitimate ones will be restructured at fair terms through a territorial trustee. You'll keep your properties. The crowd erupted in cheers. Clara stood there, hand in Ethan's, watching families celebrate their survival, and felt something break open in her chest. They'd done it. Not alone. Never alone, but together. Mrs. Patterson approached, her eyes wet. My daughter would have been proud of you, both of you. Ethan's voice was rough. Margaret would have done the same thing if she were here. No, Margaret was brave, but she wasn't strategic. She fought with her heart. Clara fights with her mind. Together you two are unstoppable. As the celebrations continued, Clara pulled Ethan aside away from the crowd. About what you said earlier, on the ride. I meant every word. I know you did. That's what scares me. Clara took a breath. I've spent my whole life being unwanted. The town spinster, the old maid, the woman nobody chose. You choosing me, saying you love me, that terrifies me more than Morrison ever did. Why? Because I might actually get to keep it, and I don't know how to trust that. Ethan cupped her face in his hands. Then let me prove it, every day, for the rest of our lives. Let me show you that you're not the woman nobody wanted. You're the woman I want, the only woman I want. Ethan, marry me again. A real wedding this time. Not forced by Morrison, not driven by debt. Just us choosing each other. Clara's breath caught. We're already married. Legally, I want to be married actually, in every way that matters. What about Margaret? Your grief. Margaret was my past. I'll always love her, but you're my future, if you'll have me. Clara looked at his face, honest, hopeful, scared. She thought about the girl she'd been a month ago, resigned to spinsterhood and loneliness. She thought about the woman she'd become fighting for a life worth living. Ask me again in 6 months, when the ranch is rebuilt and Morrison is in prison and our lives aren't in constant crisis. Ask me when things are normal and boring and we have time to actually know each other. And you'll say yes. I'll probably say yes, but ask me anyway. Make me choose you when I'm not running on fear and adrenaline and desperation. Ethan smiled. Deal. 6 months. I'm holding you to that. Good. He kissed her then right there in front of the whole coalition, in front of Sophie and Mrs. Patterson, and everyone who'd ever called her a spinster. Clara kissed him back, tasting hope and future and possibility. When they broke apart, Sophie was jumping up and down. Does this mean Clara is staying forever? Ethan looked at Clara. What do you say? Are you staying forever? Clara thought about the ashes of their house, the uncertainty ahead, the hard work of rebuilding. She thought about this man who'd started as a stranger and become her partner, this child who'd accepted her as family. Yeah, she said, I'm staying forever. The next day brought Morrison's arrest. Sheriff Douglas caught him 20 miles from Georgetown trying to cross into Wyoming. He fought, tried to bribe his way out, threatened everyone within earshot. None of it worked. The territorial investigators spent a week in Silver Creek unraveling years of corruption. Judge Mitchell resigned in disgrace. 3 town council members were charged with accepting bribes. The bank was seized and placed under territorial oversight. Every fraudulent loan was annulled. Families who'd been underwater for years suddenly owned their properties free and clear. The coalition dissolved naturally, no longer needed, but the bonds formed during the fight remained. Clara and Ethan lived in a tent on their property while construction began on a new house. It was smaller than the old one, built with coalition labor and donated materials. Sophie helped Clara plan the layout, insisting on a big kitchen where they could bake together. On the 1-month anniversary of Morrison's arrest, Clara received a letter from the territorial governor's office. She read it 3 times before she believed it. Ethan found her sitting outside the half-built house, the letter in her lap. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's what's wrong. Clara. The governor's office is awarding me a commendation for exposing corruption and organizing the coalition. They want to use Silver Creek as a model for other towns fighting predatory lending practices. They're asking me to testify before the territorial legislature. Ethan sat next to her. That's incredible. It's terrifying. I'm a school teacher. I teach 8-year-olds to read. I'm not a political reformer. You are now. Clara laughed shakily. How did this become my life? You fought for it. You earned it. We fought for it. You and me and Sophie and Mrs. Patterson and the whole coalition. This wasn't just me. But you started it. You were the first one brave enough to fight back. Clara leaned against his shoulder. I wasn't brave. I was desperate. Same thing sometimes. They sat there watching the sun set over their land, their partially built house, their future taking shape. Sophie ran over, covered in sawdust from helping the carpenters. "Clara, when the house is done, can I have the room with the window that faces the barn so I can see Papa in the mornings?" "Of course, sweetheart." "And can we paint it yellow? Mama liked yellow." Clara caught Ethan's eye. He nodded slightly. "Yellow sounds perfect." As Sophie ran back to her important construction work, Ethan took Clara's hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For honoring Margaret's memory. For letting Sophie talk about her mother. For not trying to erase what came before. She was part of your life. Part of Sophie's life. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just trying to build something new alongside what already exists. That's why I love you." Clara smiled. "You're not supposed to say that yet. We had a deal. 6 months. I'm not asking you to marry me again. I'm just stating a fact. I love you." "Well, when you put it that way." "What?" "I love you too. There. I said it. Happy. Getting there." They kissed as the sun set, as the carpenters hammered, as Sophie sang to herself, as their new life took shape around them. It wasn't the fairy tale Clara had stopped believing in years ago. It was better. It was real. It was 3 months after Morrison's arrest. Clara stood before the territorial legislature in Denver, her hands steady on the podium despite her racing heart. 30 lawmakers stared at her, waiting for the schoolteacher who'd taken down a corrupt banker to explain how she'd done it. "Gentlemen, I didn't expose Morrison's fraud because I'm exceptional. I exposed it because I could read his contracts and do basic mathematics. That's all it took. Reading and math." A legislator in the front row leaned forward. "Mrs. Walker, you're being modest. The governor's report says you organized a coalition of 37 families, orchestrated a legal strategy that bypassed local corruption and forced a territorial investigation. That's more than reading and math." "No, sir. It's exactly reading and math, plus desperation. Morrison trapped me in a marriage to control my husband's ranch. I had 2 choices: accept powerlessness or learn to fight back. I chose fighting. Any woman in this room would do the same." "There are no women in this room, Mrs. Walker." "Exactly my point, sir. If there were, predatory lending might have been addressed years ago. Women manage household finances. We know when numbers don't add up. We just aren't allowed to do anything about it." The room erupted in murmurs. The speaker banged his gavel. "Mrs. Walker, are you suggesting women should have a role in territorial banking oversight?" "I'm suggesting that excluding half the population from financial literacy and decision-making creates opportunities for men like Morrison to thrive. Teach women to read contracts. Let them testify in lending disputes. Watch how fast the fraud disappears." She left the legislature chamber to mixed reactions, half the lawmakers applauding, half looking scandalized. Ethan was waiting outside with Sophie. "How'd it go?" "I either just helped reform territorial lending law or ended any chance of being taken seriously ever again." Sophie tugged her sleeve. "Did you tell them about the math?" "I told them everything, sweetheart." "Good. Papa says you're the smartest person he knows." Clara's heart squeezed. "Your papa is biased." "Papa says bias means you like someone extra. He's biased about you, and I'm biased about you, and that's okay because you're biased about us too." Ethan grinned. "Can't argue with that logic." The ride back to Silver Creek took 2 days. They arrived to find the house completed, not grand, but solid, with yellow paint in Sophie's room, and a kitchen big enough for Clara's growing collection of recipes. Mrs. Patterson had organized a housewarming the entire coalition gathered to celebrate. "Speech," George Henderson called out. Clara shook her head, but Ethan pulled her forward. "Say something. They're waiting." She looked at the faces around her families, who'd risked everything to fight alongside them. "I don't have a speech prepared." "Then speak from your heart." Clara took a breath. 6 months ago, I was the town spinster. Unwanted. Dismissed. Forced into a marriage I didn't choose. Today I'm standing in a house we built together, surrounded by friends who fought when fighting seemed impossible. That's not a miracle. That's what happens when people refuse to accept injustice. Thank you for refusing alongside us." The crowd cheered. Sophie squeezed Clara's hand. That was a good speech. You think? Really good. Almost as good as your testimony about Morrison. You heard about that? Mrs. Patterson told me. She said you made the lawmakers look foolish. I told them the truth. Sometimes truth makes people look foolish all by itself. The celebration lasted until sunset. After everyone left, Clara walked through the new house touching walls that smelled like fresh lumber, running her hands over furniture, donated by families who'd once whispered about her behind their hands. Ethan found her in the kitchen. What are you thinking? That this doesn't feel real. Like I'll wake up back in my rented room above the general store still unmarried, still alone. You're not alone. You're never going to be alone again. I know. That's what doesn't feel real. He pulled her close. Get used to it. You're stuck with me. And Sophie. And Sophie. And this house. And this town that finally figured out you're the best thing that ever happened to it. Clara rested her head against his chest. I'm not the best thing. I'm just the loudest thing. Same difference. The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Judge Mitchell's replacement, Judge Sarah Coleman, arrived with official documents. Mrs. Walker, Mr. Walker, I have news regarding the Morrison case. Clara's stomach dropped. Is he getting out? Quite the opposite. Federal prosecutors added additional charges. Embezzlement, racketeering conspiracy. He's facing 30 years minimum. But there's a complication. What kind of complication? Morrison's lawyers are claiming the mineral rights survey was legitimate. They're arguing that even if his lending practices were fraudulent, the mineral claim should stand because it was filed before the investigation began. Ethan's jaw clenched. That's impossible. We stopped him before he filed. His lawyers produced a dated filing from the Georgetown Claims Office, time-stamped 2 hours before Sheriff Douglas blocked the office from accepting his paperwork. Clara's mind raced. That filing is fake. It has to be. Possibly. But proving it requires examining the original document, which means traveling to Georgetown, reviewing their records, and finding evidence of forgery. The territorial prosecutor's office is stretched thin. They're asking if you'd be willing to investigate personally. Me, you exposed Morrison's fraud in the first place. They trust your analytical skills. Plus you have personal stake in the outcome. If Morrison's claim stands, he retains mineral rights to your property even from prison. He could sell those rights to pay his legal fees. Over my dead body, Ethan said. Then you'll do it. Clara looked at Ethan. We'll do it. Together. Georgetown was a mining town carved into the mountains, rough and bustling. The claims office was buried in a basement beneath the assayer's building records, stacked floor to ceiling in no discernible order. The clerk, a nervous young man named Peter, showed them to Morrison's file. Here's the filing in question. Dated 2 months ago, stamped and signed. Clara examined it. The signature looked right. The date stamp appeared legitimate, but something felt wrong. Peter, who was working this office 2 months ago. Me, I'm the only clerk, have been for 3 years. Do you remember Morrison filing this claim? Not specifically. We get dozens of filings daily. But you'd remember if someone filed a claim worth $500,000? Peter hesitated. Usually yes, but I was sick that week. Influenza. Missed 4 days of work. Who covered for you? Nobody. Office was closed. Clara's pulse quickened. Then who accepted Morrison's filing? I assumed. Peter went pale. Oh God. Someone broke into the office while I was sick. Can you prove it? The lock was damaged when I came back. I thought it was just wear and tear. Reported it to maintenance but never investigated further. Ethan leaned over Clara's shoulder. Look at the stamp. It's slightly crooked. Professional clerks stamp documents straight. Clara grabbed other filings from the same week, comparing stamps. Every legitimate filing was perfectly aligned. Morrison's was tilted 15 degrees off-center. He broke in, filed the claim himself, forged the timestamp. That's a federal crime, Peter said. Add it to his list. Clara gathered the documents. We need sworn testimony from you about the break-in, the damaged lock, photographs of the comparison stamps and maintenance records showing the lock repair. Can you provide all that? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. They spent 3 days in Georgetown building an airtight case. Clara documented everything with the precision of a mathematician and the thoroughness of a schoolteacher who'd spent years grading papers for accuracy. On the ride home, Ethan watched her review her notes for the 100th time. You could have been a lawyer. I'm a teacher. You're a lot of things. Teacher is just one of them. Clara closed her notebook. What else am I? Fighter. Strategist. Leader. My wife. Though that one's still my favorite. Your forced wife. Let's be accurate. My chosen wife. Morrison forced the ceremony. I'm choosing the marriage. Every single day. Something in his tone made Clara look up. Ethan, it's been almost 6 months, Clara, since the day I asked you to marry me again when things were normal and boring. Our lives are not normal or boring. Close enough. The house is built. Morrison is in prison. The ranch is ours. We're not in crisis anymore. Clara's heart started pounding. You said 6 months. It's been 5 months and 3 weeks. I'm rounding up. That's not how time works. Clara Whitmore Walker, will you marry me again? For real this time. Because I choose you, and I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that every single day. Clara stared at him. You're proposing on horseback in the middle of nowhere. I'm proposing wherever we are because I don't want to wait another minute. Say yes. You don't even have a ring. I have this. He pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. It was my grandmother's. My father gave it to my mother. She gave it to Margaret. Margaret told me before she died to give it to whoever I loved next, if I ever loved again. He unwrapped a simple gold band worn smooth from years of wear. It's not fancy. It's not new. But it's real. Like us. Clara's vision blurred. I'm still the town spinster everyone pitied. No. You're the woman who saved this town. The woman who stood up to Morrison when everyone else was too scared. The woman who's teaching Sophie that strength comes in different forms. The woman I love more than I thought possible. You're supposed to wait 2 more weeks. I've waited long enough. Marry me, Clara. Say yes. She looked at him, this man who'd started as a stranger, become a partner, and somehow turned into the person she couldn't imagine living without. Yes. Obviously yes. You manipulative rancher. You didn't even give me time to practice my answer. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her off her horse and onto his, kissing her until they both forgot where they were. When they finally broke apart, Clara was laughing through tears. What's funny? Morrison tried to punish you by forcing you to marry me. Instead, he gave us each other. The man's a terrible strategist. Best mistake he ever made. They rode home together on one horse, Clara pressed against Ethan's chest. The ring solid on her finger. The future spreading out before them like the Colorado sky, vast, uncertain, and full of possibility. The wedding was planned for spring, 6 weeks away. Clara wanted something small, but the coalition had other ideas. Mrs. Patterson organized a town celebration. Thomas Grant offered to photograph everything for the newspaper. George Henderson's wife started sewing a dress. I don't need a fancy wedding, Clara protested. Too bad, Mrs. Patterson said. We're giving you one anyway. You gave us our lives back. Let us give you a proper celebration. Sophie was the most excited. She appointed herself wedding planner, making lists of flowers and songs and seating arrangements with the seriousness of a general planning a campaign. Clara, do I call you Mama after the wedding? The question stopped Clara cold. Do you want to call me Mama? I don't know. I had one Mama already. Would she be sad if I had another one? Clara knelt down to Sophie's level. Your first Mama loves you forever. Nothing changes that. If you want to call me Mama, that's okay. If you want to keep calling me Clara, that's okay too. You get to decide. What if I want to call you Clara Mama both together? Then that's what you call me. Sophie threw her arms around her neck. I love you, Clara Mama. Clara held her this child who'd lost so much and still had room in her heart for more love. I love you too, sweetheart. 2 weeks before the wedding, a telegram arrived from the territorial prosecutor's office. Morrison's mineral rights claim had been invalidated based on Clara's evidence. The mineral rights remained with the Walker property. But there was more. The prosecutor wanted to meet with Clara and Ethan in Denver, immediately. "What now?" Ethan asked. "Only one way to find out." They left Sophie with Mrs. Patterson and rode to Denver, arriving at the prosecutor's office to find 3 men waiting: the territorial prosecutor, a federal marshal, and a representative from a mining company. The mining company rep spoke first. "Mr. and Mrs. Walker, we've been investigating the silver deposit on your property. Based on Morrison's original survey and our own assessment, the deposit is worth significantly more than initially estimated, potentially over $1 million. Clara's ears rang. "$1 million? We'd like to purchase the mineral rights. We're prepared to offer you $200,000 upfront plus 20% of all profits from the mine. You'd retain ownership of the surface property and all structures." Ethan gripped Clara's hand. We need time to think." "Take all the time you need. But I should mention there are 3 other mining companies preparing offers. This is a competitive bid situation." They left the office in a daze. $200,000. More money than either of them had imagined earning in a lifetime. "We could rebuild the ranch bigger than before," Ethan said. "Buy more land. Hire more hands. Sophie could go to the finest schools. We could do a lot of things." Clara was thinking fast. "Or we could do something different." "Like what?" "Morrison destroyed lives across this county. He stole from families who will never recover what they lost. What if we used this money to help them?" Ethan stopped walking. "What are you suggesting?" "A fund. For families Morrison victimized, low-interest loans, educational scholarships, support for widows and children. We could turn Morrison's greed into something that actually helps people. That's not just generous, Clara. That's necessary. We didn't fight Morrison just to get rich ourselves. We fought him to prove that people matter more than profit. Let's prove it. You want to give away a fortune to help strangers. Not strangers, neighbors, friends, people who stood with us when standing was dangerous." Ethan studied her face. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Then we do it together. But Clara, we keep enough to secure Sophie's future, and ours. We can be generous without being foolish." "Agreed. Keep $100,000 for our family. Use the rest to establish the fund." Morrison would roll over in his grave. Morrison's not dead yet, but when he hears about this, he might wish he was. They spent the next week negotiating. The mining company agreed to their terms. The territorial prosecutor helped establish the Morrison Victims Relief Fund, named specifically to remind everyone where the money came from and who it was meant to help. The announcement hit Silver Creek like lightning. "You're giving it away." George Henderson looked stunned. "All of it." "Not all. We're keeping enough to live comfortably. The rest goes to families Morrison hurt." "But that's a fortune that we didn't earn. Morrison's crimes created this wealth. It feels right to use it fixing what he broke." Mrs. Patterson hugged Clara so hard she couldn't breathe. "My daughter would have loved this. You taken something meant for evil and turning it toward good." The wedding came faster than Clara expected. Spring arrived with wildflowers and warm winds, and suddenly she was standing in the church, wearing a dress she'd never imagined owning, walking toward a man she'd never imagined loving. Sophie walked beside her, carrying flowers, whispering encouragement. "You look beautiful, Clara Mama. You think your papa will agree?" "Papa cried when he saw you, happy crying. He definitely agrees." Ethan stood at the altar wearing his best suit, his eyes locked on Clara like she was the only person in the world. Judge Coleman performed the ceremony, her voice warm. "We gather here to witness Ethan Walker and Clara Whitmore Walker renew their vows, not because law requires it, but because love demands it. Because what was forced has become chosen. What was obligation has become devotion." Clara's vows were simple. "I marry you, Ethan Walker, by choice. I choose your daughter as my daughter. I choose this ranch as my home. I choose this life we're building together, today and every day forward." Ethan's voice shook. "I marry you, Clara Walker, with gratitude for the miracle of having you in my life. You saved my ranch, my daughter, and my heart. I was drowning before you came. You pulled me to shore. Now I'm choosing to swim beside you for the rest of our lives." They kissed to thunderous applause. Sophie jumped up and down. Mrs. Patterson sobbed. The coalition cheered. The celebration afterward filled the town square. Music played. Food appeared from every household. Children ran wild while adults danced and laughed and told stories about the fight against Morrison that grew more dramatic with each retelling. As sunset painted the sky gold and pink, Clara found herself alone with Ethan for a moment, watching their community celebrate. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About which part, marrying you the first time or the second time?" "Either. Both." Clara thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, resigned to loneliness, convinced she'd never matter to anyone. She thought about everything that had happened since Morrison forced them together. The fear, the fighting, the discovery that she was stronger than she'd ever known. No regrets, not one. Not even when Morrison threatened to burn us out, especially not then. That's when I realized what we were building was worth defending, worth fighting for, worth everything. Ethan pulled her close. "I love you, Clara Walker." "I love you too, Ethan Walker. Even though you proposed too early and manipulated me with your grandmother's ring and didn't give me time to prepare a proper answer." "Your improper answer was perfect." "You're biased." "Extremely. Sophie taught me that word." They stood together, watching their town celebrate their daughter, dancing with Mrs. Patterson, their future shining bright and certain. Morrison had tried to destroy them by forcing them together. Instead, he'd created something unbreakable. Clara thought about the schoolteacher she'd been dismissed, pitied, unwanted. She thought about the woman she'd become, feared, respected, loved. The transformation hadn't come from magic or luck. It came from refusing to accept powerlessness, from choosing to fight when fighting seemed impossible, from learning that sometimes the most unexpected circumstances create the most extraordinary outcomes. "Clara!" Sophie appeared breathless from dancing. "Are we really a family now?" "We were always a family, sweetheart. The wedding just made it official." "Good, because I like being your daughter. I like being your Clara mama." Sophie hugged them both, this child who'd accepted Clara when acceptance seemed impossible, and Clara felt her heart expand with a joy so fierce it hurt. Later that night, after the celebration ended, and Sophie fell asleep exhausted, Clara and Ethan sat on their porch watching stars emerge. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked. "How Morrison wanted to punish you by forcing you to marry the unwanted spinster. How he thought I was worthless. How wrong he was about everything." "He was wrong about you from the start." "No, he was right about one thing. I was unwanted. I was dismissed. I was invisible to this town." "Clara, let me finish. He was right about who I was, but he was wrong about who I could become. He thought forcing us together would destroy you. Instead, it gave us both a chance to build something real." "You're not giving yourself enough credit. You didn't just build something real. You transformed an entire county, changed territorial lending law, created a fund that will help families for generations. We did that, together." "You started it." Clara smiled. "You finished it. That's what partners do." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from truly knowing another person, from fighting beside them, from choosing them every day, even when choosing is hard. "Clara, do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if Morrison hadn't forced this marriage?" She considered the question honestly. "I'd still be teaching, still alone, still convinced I was too old and too educated and too independent for anyone to want me. I'd have survived, but I wouldn't have lived. And now I'm living. More than I ever imagined possible." Ethan kissed her temple. "Good. Because I plan to keep you living and loving and fighting and transforming counties for the next 50 years minimum." 50 years? That's ambitious. I'm an ambitious man. You taught me that. Clara laughed, the sound carrying across their land, their home, their future. Morrison had tried to trap them in a loveless marriage. Instead, he'd given them the greatest gift imaginable, each other. The town that had once dismissed her as an old maid now called her a hero. The man forced to marry her now chose her daily. The child who'd lost her mother had gained a Clara mama. And the ranch Morrison tried to steal had become the foundation for healing an entire community. Clara Whitmore. Walker looked at her husband. Thought about their daughter sleeping inside. Remembered the fight that brought them here, and knew with absolute certainty that every terrifying, painful, impossible moment had been worth it. Because sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the doorways to the best things we never knew we needed. And sometimes when powerful men try to destroy you by forcing you into the last thing you wanted, you discover that what you wanted and what you needed were never the same thing at all. Morrison forced them together as punishment, but they chose to stay together as partners, and that choice transformed everything: their lives, their town, and the very definition of what it means to fight back when the world tells you you're powerless. They weren't powerless anymore, and they never would be again.